He alo a he alo, face to face. That's how you learn about what makes us weep. He alo a he alo, face to face. That's how you learn about what makes us feel, what makes us work, what makes us sing, what makes us bitter, what makes us fight, what makes us laugh, what makes us heal, what makes us stand against the wind, what makes us sit in the flow of power, what makes us us. Not from a distance, not from miles away, not from a book, not from an article you read, not from the newspaper, not from what somebody told you, not from a reliable source, not from what you think, not from a cliff, not from a cave, not from your reality, not from your darkness, nor from your light, but he alo a he alo, face to face, or else pa'ako waha, shut tight your mouth. A'ohi o kahinana o luna o kapali, I homai alalone, ike au nui, ke au iki. He alo a he alo. The top of the cliff isn't the place to look at us. Come down here and learn of the big and little current, face to face, and come and help us dig the lo'i deep.
This live broadcast and live stream of Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall, start now.
Aloha and welcome to Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall. I'm Leslie Wilcox. This live broadcast and live stream are coming to you from the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Multimedia Studio at PBS Hawaii in Honolulu. We want to thank Puanani Burgess, whom you just saw, for sharing a special reading of her poem, He Alo a He Alo, Face to Face. The alo is the same as the alo in aloha, meaning face or presence. In the spirit of Kākou, which is all of us, and he alo a he alo, face-to-face conversation, some of your friends, family, and neighbors are here from across the state tonight to have a talk about the global squeeze. How do we keep Hawaii Hawaii? We want to thank you all for being here. This is a topic that I think has resonated enough to bring you here. And I wonder what comes to mind first and foremost when you say, when the question is asked, how do you keep Hawaii Hawaii?
When I think about keeping Hawaii Hawaii, it's something that you already raised. It's connection. It's he alo a he alo. It's the connection between a teacher and a student, the connection between a grandparent and a grandchild, or a parent and their child. And it's something that can only happen face to face. The digital world cannot maintain what Hawaii is. We need to do it like this. We need to do it with human touch, with the exchange of ha, with that type of connection.
Thank you, Kainua from Maui.
I think part of what keeps Hawaii Hawaii is the importance of the stories and the language, and we have to share those stories with people who are new to the islands, who may not be aware of them or may not be aware of the meaning of certain words and using them incorrectly or not using them at all. You know, we need to help perpetuate the language no matter what our background is, and to perpetuate the culture, to keep it vibrant and ongoing in the future as we become more tech savvy and more technical.
Thank you. From Puna, thank you for being here. And we have a number of other neighbor islanders here. Ili?
Aloha. Keeping this place special will require all of us, Kākou, all of us. And whether we like it or not, we're all in this together. Whether you got here 10 years ago or your family got here 1,000 years ago, we're all in this together. And the world is watching. We're more connected than anywhere else on Earth. You walk our beaches, you see opala from all around the world washing up. We are at the middle of it. And so our ability to move forward together is going to come from our ability to talk about the challenges facing us. Aloha he alo.
Beautiful, and you're from Kona side. Thank you.
This may have been a moment where we can all come together and learn something, because I've never seen a more eclectic group in one room. The collective mana'o of all of us sitting next to Kainoa talking about kupuna, realizing that I am one, and also taking a look at how do we keep this very special place special. We had a great example a few days ago when water washed away a lot of belongings for a lot of people. Aloha was immediately extended. And then there were looters. And then there was a boy on Kauai that decided to charge people $200 to give them a boat ride. So I think that tonight, one of the ways to focus on this is to say, okay, what is the good of what just happened this weekend? What did we learn? And what is the bad? And can we have a lifeguard on Waikiki Beach worrying about people having sex on the beach in front of tourists or doing drugs on the beach in front of tourists? How do we let people know we need to make Hawaii, Hawaii again? Can it be done? This group can be a big part of it.
Yeah, we can make a start here tonight. Thank you, Mike. You know, no one place can stay the same forever. And we're not here tonight to complain or assign blame or decide that everything new is bad and we want to bring back the good old days. The good old days had their share of problems and ideas that maybe we wouldn't put up with today. Hawaii is changing, and so are we. Geographically, we're still the most isolated population center on Earth. What's changing is that we're personally connected and influenced by a global community. And that connectivity amounts to a great deal more than our Facebook page. The global squeeze touches us every day in different ways. It's a powerful influence on our lives. And examples of this I know will come up throughout tonight's conversation. Let's go right now to our social media center. Liberty Peralta and her team have comments that came in earlier. Liberty?
Yes, over the last few weeks, we've been asking people on social media, how are they feeling about living in Hawaii? A lot's been changing, maybe the good and the not so good. And the general climate that we've been seeing on social media so far is that people recognize and appreciate the special things that make living in Hawaii so great. But there's a lot of fear and concern from people, especially when it comes to the high cost of living here. We have a couple comments here from Facebook. This one is from Sindra. She says, "There is an undercurrent of fear among all of us, regardless of age. It feels as if the fabric of our lives has been torn by escalating crime, violence, homelessness, and social media, including the news, keeps these fears in the forefront of our consciousness. Weren't we all more innocent, trusting, and giving back in the day? We've lost something for sure." We got another comment from Stephanie, also on Facebook. She says, "I was taught that if I go to school, I'll get a good job to pay for that house one day. But that education came with a cost and set me back. Owning a house doesn't even seem feasible anymore, with competition continuing to rise month over month." Now, we'd like to ask you tonight, how are you feeling about change and living in Hawaii? Has it been difficult for you, or do you feel otherwise? You can email us at kako@pbshawaii.org. Use the hashtag PBSKākou on Twitter. And we also have a live stream going on pbshawaii.org and our PBS Hawaii Facebook page where you can leave a comment there. And we'll also be checking messages on Instagram as well. Leslie?
Mahalo, Liberty. Most people are struggling with Hawaii's high cost of living. Most of us know people who reluctantly left Hawaii rather than continue to work hard and never get ahead. Let's take a moment to listen to what was said on a recent episode of Insights on PBS Hawaii by a single working mother, Nani Medeiros.
I've actually come to a place, born and raised here, only lived in Hawaii my whole life. I've never lived anywhere else. Part Hawaiian, but I've kind of come to a place in the last couple of years where I've accepted that I might not stay here forever. My daughter might not make Hawaii her home, and that's okay. You know, before that, I would have never considered it. And I've made some pretty big decisions based on thinking I will be here forever. But, you know, working in the environment I've worked in, seeing what I've seen what hasn't happened yet, I kind of have come to terms with it's not the Hawaii I grew up in. Not to say it's better or worse, it's just different. And as it has changed, with different kinds of development, with different kinds of job economics at play, and where we're putting our money in terms of workforce development and where we're not, what the education system looks like, what the opportunities are like, especially because I have a child, I'm thinking maybe I won't be here forever.
a lot of people feel that there's no way that we can actually control the future economically here. And some of the concerns that she raised are things that we all sort of have come to understand and even take for granted, that we're not going to be able to afford to own a house, maybe not afford to rent. We see more and more of the attention of the economy for a long time now, really aimed at bringing more and more people here and at flipping properties and creating profits for other people. And we think that somehow there's nothing we can do about that. But at the same time, I think, you know, I work in a place where we're surrounded by Hawaiians in the School of Hawaiian Knowledge, and we feel a tremendous kind of hope that we will continue to work toward really changing that economy, making it someplace that people can actually live in again and sustain themselves and support themselves. And these two realities are really coming at each other with tremendous force. And I can only feel really hopeful that we will prevail in this. Hawaii has, it's not just cultural change and social change we're looking at here. We need to have political and economic change if Hawaiians are going to stay here. And honestly, if Hawaiians disappear from this place, it isn't Hawaii anymore.
Aloha. I really agree with what John has just said. And also, I just want to bring up 2 points. One is looking into the future. And an example is Ala Moana Beach Park. I don't think the city and county should have gone to New York to hire for $100,000 somebody to tell people in Hawaii what they need to do with Ala Moana Park, which was perfectly good to begin with. A lot of surfers, a lot of swimmers, a lot of people go there and play. It's a people's park. And why did they spend the money to give to someone in New York when they could have found somebody here in Hawaii to give them advice? I would have gave them advice for less than $100,000. And I think my advice would have been better, quite frankly. But that's just one example of some of the things we can do is contact the people who decide that it's more important and it's better to get somebody from the mainland to tell people in Hawaii how they need to do their parks. Another example is I'm an attorney, and I went to federal court, and I was told that there was refurbishing done in federal courthouse here. Well, what they did is they put in marble floors, and they hired somebody from Italy to come and do the marble floors in the federal courthouse here in Honolulu, when I know there are a lot of people who specialize in marble here in Hawaii who could have put in those marble floors. Now, when the marble floors crack, I was told, they need to hire somebody from Italy to fly them back to Honolulu to fix these cracked marble floors. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So people need to wake up and say, hey, we need to, if you want people, younger people to stay in Hawaii, then you need to provide jobs, meaningful jobs, and give them meaningful things to do, and pay them well instead of going outside to Italy and to New York City. And one other thing, and I'll pass the mic. I see a lot of progress here in Hawaii. I was in court, and I saw Hawaiian interpreters interpreting for Hawaiian protesters to the judge, who here in Oahu, I know it's different over there in Maui, but on Oahu, the judge was very receptive to it. And it was wonderful, beautiful to hear the people talk in Hawaiian and to interpret it for the judge. It was beautiful and wonderful, and I think it will encourage more people to learn Hawaiian and to keep the culture Hawaiian.
Thank you.
Hi. Oh, sorry. You going?
Mahalo nui loa for that mana'o, for returning to the importance of Olelo Hawaii, because to me, as long as Olelo Hawaii lives. As long as we continue to teach the language, the music, the arts, the culture, the dance, the place names, as long as my haumana know the place where they live, the importance of it, as long as they know how to take care of it as well. I also wanted to return to the thought of Kauai, because I have the joy and the honor of living on Kauai. We are, in essence, actually a small community. And when we have disasters, as we recently have, the community pulls together in unbelievable ways to kokua each other. No matter where on the island we live, we kokua those who are in the areas that are hardest hit. And it is with that I say mahalo nui loa to all those who have contributed to our flood relief efforts, because there's considerable rebuilding to do on the island of Kauai. So mahalo nui.
Thank you.
I think we have to look at the macro changes. Can I? Yeah. I think we have to look at the macro changes, the sea changes that go on, and we don't necessarily notice them. We don't see them as headlines. We don't see them in the newspaper at all. But they happen, and little things, demographic things, numbers things affect us. I went a year or two ago to Eugene, Oregon, and I stumbled into a Kanakapila there, where there were 50, maybe 60 people, all of whom were playing Hawaiian songs, and it was very touching. They all wanted to be here, but they were there and feeling sad that they weren't here. And that's because they couldn't afford to be here. So these are serious problems. A lot of people are leaving. They don't really want to leave. They prefer to stay. And it goes to the point about occupancy, and land is too expensive. There aren't enough jobs. We talk about this. Gosh, we've been talking about this for 20 years at least. Since the days of John Burns and George Ariyoshi, we've been talking about these same issues. And this is a good example of that. But how do you convert that into recognizing the sea change and doing something about it now to action? And I hope that we'll cover a little of the action points tonight.
Right, to come at it from a position of strength rather than reactive crisis.
Yeah, I just want to echo everybody that has already spoken. I came here because I wanted to come here and participate, because I feel that everybody has the responsibility to do something about all these issues. There is a multi-layered issue, multifaceted issues. I mean, it's just problems after problems or issues after issues. One in particular is what I call brain drain. You know, a lot of our bright kids are moving on to places that, to mainland, to foreign countries to work, and they're not here anymore. You know, they could be contributing to our economy. And the other day I was driving down the road in Hilo, and I saw this bumper sticker. Where there's no aloha if there's no Hawaiians. And, you know, I stop and I really think about that, and it's really true. Everybody attracted to Hawaii because of the special place it is. And I'm an immigrant, and I came here because of the special place that Hawaii is. And the Hawaii that I came here 30-something years ago is no longer the Hawaii that, you know, it's no longer it is. And why is that? And if we just sit around and watch the problems going by and not really participating in it in this kind of forum, you know, the Hawaii is going to continue to become issues, and you're going to face issues after issues. So this is a very good opportunity that PBS put on for us to really come here and, you know, we're not lawmakers, but maybe we can start the voice, bring up the voice that there is issues that we need to address in order to keep Hawaii and maintain our kids here, retain our brightest, you know, our kids that are bright. You know, our kids are special, and I do a lot of work in the DOE system, so I see it, a lot of volunteer work, and I see our kids, and I look in the eyes of these kids, little kids, and I said, I hope these kids are gonna stay here. I hope these kids are gonna stay here. But you know, we see it. We see it in our eyes that the kids are just moving on. So we got to do something, and this is a good opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the places.
One more, and then we'll move on.
So speaking of young people, I'm fortunate to work with some young people with millennials, which seem to have a bad rap. I really do think they have a bad rap. What I found with the people that I work with is that they embody a lot of the things that we're talking about. Talking about a balance in life, talking about a simpler life, talking about, you know, connecting with people. And I think sometimes as more of a senior person, I think I have more of the answers. But I really find when I open myself up to listen to the younger generation and what they want and what have you, it may be a lot different than what I think is the right thing, but just some great ideas. And I hate to see what I hear sometimes is them sort of dismissed as always being on their cell phones and being self-centered and all of that, because that hasn't been my experience.
I think Rob from Molokai has
Thank
a comment,
you.
and then we'll move on to video, but lots more time to talk tonight.
Yeah, well, one of the places we experience that most is Molokai. And we talk about the brain drain that Tom talked about. And we know that the greatest indicator of health in a community is jobs. And as unemployment increases, so do the social problems that come along with high unemployment. And over on Molokai, it's amplified because we don't have that large of an economy. We have 2,500 people in our workforce. We don't have industries that are able to absorb when something happens. We're just lost one of our largest employers, Micage and Seeds, laid off 82 people. 82 people, 82 jobs gone from Molokai. That's equivalent to 15,800 jobs on Oahu. And over 10 million, I estimate about $10 million a year worth of economy that just disappeared from Molokai's economy. So it's a big challenge. People on Molokai want to work, but there's that lack of jobs. And the best way that we know to perpetuate the culture is to keep the people home. And I know that I may be one of the youngest residents to Hawaii here. I've been here 11 years, but my wife's been here for 5 generations. So I've learned quite a bit and had the opportunity to be welcomed into a community by someone who's lived here for that long. So I may have a little bit younger of a perspective, and I thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Thank you, Rob. You know, indeed, it's long been said in Hawaii that the term affordable housing is a contradiction in terms. As you know, we have one of the most expensive housing markets in the country. In a few minutes, you'll see a story on this subject prepared by 8th grade Hikino student journalists from Maui Waiana Intermediate. We decided to ask the 2 students who produced that story whether they think they'll settle in Hawaii after they graduate. Here's what Logan Tsukiyama and Hannah Okamoto told us.
I've thought a lot about coming back here after college and having a job and owning my own home. But after researching and seeing how much housing costs here, I'm not really sure if I could come back here. And I would love to come back here because this is where I've grown up and this is all I know. And I would really want to come back, but I just don't know if I could.
Yeah, you know, I feel the same way because after doing this story and studying the issue, it makes me kind of frustrated just because of the rising costs and all of that stuff. It kind of worries me.
Middle school students, and here we have a high school student, also a Hikino student from Sacred Hearts Academy on Oahu, Rebecca Meyer. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi. I can definitely relate to the students because there's enough stress put on us to be successful in our education, but now that I'm a junior, they're also emphasizing going to college and being successful. And they don't necessarily emphasize to stay here either. They support us wanting to go out into the world. And I agree with them because personally, I feel the stress of having to make enough money to live here. And I would love to, honestly, but I don't think personally that I can because I want to become a journalist. And I know there are many successful journalists here, but I need to get the experience, I need to get the education, and I feel like going other places would give me more opportunities because even now I try to get part-time jobs somewhere to get some experience in the workforce itself, but they won't take me because I don't have experience. And how am I supposed to get this experience if they won't let me just try it? So, and rising costs, we already have so much stress, and then we have to think about paying for houses, raising a family, and then taking care of our kupuna. And it's just so much for us to think about, and we just want to get away from it all.
I see. Thank you, Rebecca. I have the pleasure of sitting next to the teacher of the Maui Waiana Intermediate students that you heard earlier, who did the affordable housing story that you'll see in a moment. But this is Jennifer Suzuki, who I got to say is a rock star in the world of digital media, national award-winning students, local award-winning students. And I don't think you started off in digital media. This is an acquired taste.
Yeah, I started off as an English teacher, and because of that beautiful lady over there and some summer training,
Candy
thank you,
is
Candy,
the beautiful lady,
and Sea Writer Productions, I was able to start a media program, and I see the value in it. The kids like Logan and Hannah are able to speak their minds, express their concerns. We all sat in the room after that and cried, so because it's really disappointing. I just recently came back from New York. I met up with two of my former students who are both attending college. One's graduating with a fashion degree, one's graduating with an engineering degree, and neither are coming home.
In general, these are middle school kids you generally are teaching. As early as middle school, are you hearing this?
Yeah, when I was in middle school, I think I was stupid because I didn't think about going to college really. I mean, I knew it was out there. I didn't really think about buying a house or anything. It wasn't really on my radar, but my students are so much smarter. So I definitely agree with what you said about the upcoming generation being amazing. They're thinking ahead. I mean, I have most of my girls and boys know what colleges they want to go to, and they're in like 7th and 8th grade. I'm like, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and you're so sure. But yeah, so they're amazing. They're thinking about the future, and they're really concerned.
And really appreciate what you're doing in the schools. Let's see the story that your students, and in Hiki no, students, they find the story, they research it, they write it, they do everything, but under your guidance.
This was actually a challenge, so I couldn't help them at all. But yes,
This
under my
was a
guidance.
contest. Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, under your purview. Yes. Okay. So, and we'll see that story in a minute. Just a little background. The global squeeze has definitely contributed to our housing problems, with realtors reaching a worldwide market. People from other states and other countries want to live here or invest here, and buyers have many choices if they have many dollars. While the average hourly wage in Hawaii is less than $15, your household income needs to be about $35 to afford an average 2-bedroom rental unit. Sometimes we get so caught up in the numbers, though, that we lose sight of what a home can really mean to a family. And here now is the story from Jennifer Suzuki's journalists from Maui Waena Intermediate.
I'll show you around.
This is a tremendous opportunity for people to be able to purchase homes who typically wouldn't be able to. It's so expensive to purchase a home here, not just on Maui, but in Hawaii. And without development like this, I'm not too sure what we'd be able to do. We're feeling blessed every day.
Having a home, a place to build a family and memories, is extremely important, maybe even more so in Hawaii's challenging economy. The Lokahi Pacific Foundation, an independent, nonprofit housing and community development organization, is trying to make this dream a reality for some Maui residents in Happy Valley, which was once the heart of Wailuku and a special place to many residents. This year, the community of Mokuhau came to life. 16 homes were built and are being sold to first-time homeowners for very reasonable prices.
You know, we deal with a lot of people on the mainland when we're building homes like this. And one of the first questions they always ask is, well, what is an affordable price in Hawaii? And when we say these are selling for $380,000, you know, you can almost hear their teeth drop, because to them that is a first-class house with many rooms and many upgrades and so forth. And we say, yeah, but that's compared to an average price for a house of this size of $685,000 if you were to buy at market rate.
This is your home, Ela Ann. This is special because it's an affordable housing project, which gives people who normally would not be able to go out and purchase a home an opportunity, because there was no other way we could have come up with getting a $600,000, $700,000 house on our income.
We're building these because we need housing in this price range, and because our mission statement as a nonprofit is to help and enhance the livability for people of Maui.
This collection of homes, these individual special places that come together to form a neighborhood, create a community that is truly unique.
As I've worked with these people over the last 2 years, as they got closer to actually buying their properties, I can see them gelling. Actually, there's 5 kids that take the same school bus to their school up country. They didn't know each other before, and now they're carpooling to, you know, taking turns, taking them to the bus to get on it. So it's like they just have so much in common for being from such different backgrounds.
Especially being parents, having children, the fact that they can come out onto a cul-de-sac on a road and ride a bicycle. Piper's 10 and she never owned a bicycle ever in her life, and so we moved here and we bought her a bicycle and she took to it and she rode around. So that's a special thing for a parent to see for the first time. That's a kind of a childhood experience that I had that now they get to have, so that's very special.
Having a home is even more than that. It is a special place a family can call their own. This is Hannah Okamoto from Hawaiʻi Intermediate School for Hiki No.
Good job. Hi, addressing the affordable housing, my daughter is one of those who had to leave and lives in Texas because of there was no affordable housing and jobs, basically. So this topic has been on my mind for a while, and it made me think about when we were sending her to college, what in-state tuition benefits are. And like the UH offers in-state tuition, which is half of what out-of-state tuition costs. So I thought, well, why don't we do that for housing? I mean, the rationale was that people who lived here had paid taxes, contributed to the infrastructure, helped build and fund the university, and the residents do the same with building infrastructure for homes and with sewers and et cetera like that. So I think the rationale should be similar, that somehow, in order to have residents stay here, there ought to be some kind of allowance, like an in-state housing allowance, like we have in-state tuition.
Thank you.
Or you could just tax people who buy and sell property and homes that don't live in them. I mean, you could tax the heck out of them. And you could use those revenues basically to subsidize and to support the ability of people to live here. I also think, though, that we might want to consider a different kind of standard for what really amounts to a good life in Hawaii. And home ownership may not actually be the thing. I mean, if there's sufficient numbers of rental units, if there are communities that are allowed to basically live in place for a long time, and we don't just evict them in order to make room for more high-priced housing. And this is something that's been going on here since the beginning of the 20th century. We evicted hundreds of people from working farms and fish ponds in Waikiki to make room for that. And we've actually created a group of people who are homeless. And they started moving, and we've been doing this ever since. We shouldn't be surprised that there's homelessness here. We shouldn't be surprised that now it's not just the really poor that are being affected by the uncertainty of the future. It's now the lower middle class and the middle class. It's really eating us all up. And I don't think that we are going to fix this with half-hearted measures. And I really like your idea, but I think we should tax people.
Also, for some context, I wanted to jump in. I'm that person. I'm a millennial. I'm living with my fiance in a 2-bedroom apartment in Wailuku. We both have good jobs, and I think our job should be able to sustain us, or at least give us a plan to purchase a home sometime in the future. But it's still not working. It's as if we need to win in Vegas to get down payment, but it's. We don't see it. We don't see the plan. We just cannot afford it. And there's talk about creating more opportunities. One thing I'm hopeful, though, I used to work for the county council. I think our legislators are aware of this problem. And there are measures that are being introduced, and they're constantly working on it. But like Tom said earlier, it's just a really complicated issue that would affect so many people, so many different aspects. So it's finding the balance, I feel. It's the really hard thing to do for us. Maybe I'm just naturally optimistic, so but I think there's future for all of us,
I think we have to take strong steps, don't you?
I agree.
We've been living with this problem, talking about this problem for decades, and still not enough good jobs. And the cost of occupancy is way too high, and people reluctantly they leave. And I mean, if we connected those two issues to the future of the state, and I think they are completely connected to the future of the state, and we said we want to survive this state, we want to save Hawaii as it is or as we'd like it to be, then we have to take dramatic steps, and soon, about those things. Because every person who leaves, those kids, it's really sad, they leave, and their children leave. And their families are now on the mainland, and all the prospect that we might have had from them is gone. And so we lose not only them, but we lose a part of ourselves that way. Anyway, I agree with you guys about the tax. We can't do the Great Mahele of 2018. We can't do that, and it didn't work too well in 1848, and that showed us a few things. But we can tinker with things. We can use tax incentives and tax benefits and credits and what have you, and take fairly dramatic steps to level the playing field. And that's step one. Step two, maybe we're going to talk about it later, is developing these jobs, real jobs, to keep people here, to keep them middle class. You know, the thing about affordable housing is if you have to struggle too hard for your housing, it doesn't matter what your bracket is. It's not affordable. And there's a lot of people who are not homeless, but their housing is ill-affordable. So it really crosses the board. We're talking about a huge systemic problem. And that's one of the two problems I think we should talk about, that and jobs.
I'd like to, speak to John's point. You know, I have the privilege to work with some amazing colleagues with houseless families in the Pu'uhonua Waianae. We do some early ed services there, but the interesting thing that you see with that community is I live in Palolo Valley, but what they have in the Pu'uhonua is probably more of a community there than what we have currently in Palolo, the current Palolo, not the old Palolo. So to John's point about not necessarily having to own a home to necessarily be part of thriving Lahui or whatnot is definitely point on. I think what the struggles, especially with homelessness, is it starts from the womb almost. And Hawaii has just an unbelievably sparse pathway for early childhood education. Considering that the first 1,000 days of a child's life, you know, about 80% of the brain is formed at that point. But yet on East Hawaii Island, 74 3-year-olds compete for one 3-year-old seat. There's something inherently wrong when the most important time and the most important years aren't really being heavily invested or taken seriously in some ways by people in our state. So there's no wonder that there's a divide, because it begins at the earliest, most vulnerable learners in early childhood education, and then it just goes downhill straight from there.
I keep thinking about the fact that, you know, to address big challenges like affordable housing, or I like to say affordable rentals, because it really, for a lot of folks, it is about rentals, not owning, that the underlying challenge isn't about resources or about laws or, you know, exemptions or zoning. It has more to do with like people barriers. So we've kind of lost our way when we talk about the theme of tonight in terms of us taking care of each other, and sort of that concept of, you know, you're not always going to win. You're not always going to come out on top. You're not always, and what's the greater good, right? Like, are you able to sort of sacrifice in different ways in order for other folks who might be more vulnerable or more in need to get where they need to get? And can you do that? And I think that a lot of folks have lost the ability to make those kinds of sacrifices in their day-to-day, to be able to make those things happen for people who really need the help. And I think that's the bigger challenge.
So no cushion. You know, we have the privilege of being healo a healo, but we have people on social media who want in on this. We can't fit everyone in the room. Liberty, what have you heard on social media?
During the conversation about taxing people who buy investment property, several people on our Facebook live stream who are watching our live stream agreed. And this comment from Trey on Facebook, he says, we should tax people who don't live here and give tax breaks to people who have ancestral ties to this Aina. Earlier on, we ran that story from Maui Waina Intermediate, and Gladys on Maui said, my family has been on Maui since the monarchy, but I'm pretty sure my grandchildren will not be able to stay much longer. So sad. Kaipo, though, who's watching us also on Facebook, he thinks that this town hall is so off track. The bottom line is the entire world has similar problems as Hawaii. And earlier on, we actually had asked people on social media, is there any change that they feel feel hopeful about? Solomon on Facebook said, new grassroots leaders everywhere, not just in politics. New leaders creates a new vision. More people finding ways to be activists for their communities and overall awareness to social and political action. Leslie?
All right, thank you very much, Liberty. Appreciate that. You know, sometimes keeping Hawaii can be about pushing back on a potential threat to a personal ritual or shared activity that we take for granted. During the past 30 years or so, if you've gone to Honolulu's Ala Moana Park early in the morning, you may have seen some buddies who've been surfing there since they were teenagers. They know the park needs upgrading, but they don't want to see a full overhaul. They don't want to see Waikiki spread into an area that's a longtime favorite spot for locals. They're serious about protecting the place that's provided the backdrop, the setting for friendship that means even more to them as years go by.
A lot of us grew up together in high school. A lot of us went to the same high school.
As an adult, Ala Moana called us back. We meet up with the friends that we grew up surfing with and learning how to surf. We consider it a good community. We try to keep it a good community.
Some of the others come here consistently. Every time when the surf is up, you will see the same faces out here.
This is something that I feel we have in common, our love of the ocean, and this park is very important to us.
We're competitors for the same wave, but yet we can coexist enough to party with each other, so that says a lot. We look after each other.
As a old-timer and beach boy down here, I sit over here by my van down that side, and I can see all the way down if anybody hitting anybody's car, trying to break in or anything.
Ala Moana is our last resort. Park our cars. We're right here. The sand is right next to the car. And look at the ocean. We can just walk right out.
If we can possibly hold on to even a bit of the simpler time, the old Hawaii that we know and love, we'd like to keep that for our children and their children if possible. But really, just being here in Hawaii is such a special thing.
Boys of the days gone by reminds me of my growing up, and Waikiki and Sansui and in Waikiki, as well as Ala Moana, was very important to our families. That was our gathering place. And so to see things changing so fastly here, unfortunately for my family, I had to get out of here and move 25 years ago to be able to keep a house over our heads. And that was 25 years ago. Then moved to Hawaiʻi Island, where I see so many changes now. And the value of land is very important to us. Water is very important to us. And sustaining Hawaii, we talk about sustaining Hawaii, if we don't have our natural resources, we have nothing. Never mind the overdevelopment of Oahu. We sort of, us on the neighbor islands, sort of givey. Don't come to our island, though. Don't develop our islands. Don't make it unaffordable for us. Luckily for me, I have a daughter who graduated from Kamehameha, went away for 15 years, and returned home. Luckily, her husband got a job here. Otherwise, I would be spending months on the mainland with my grandchildren, and I don't want them to be grown up there. I want them home. And that's, I think, for many of us who have deep roots in our islands, we want our families home again.
Well, growing up here, growing up on the Big Island in Hilo, I remember as a kid being able to go ride my bike around town, and we were always able to go within like a 5, 6, 7 mile radius. Is pretty much go as far as you're able to come back before it gets dark. And what we've seen now over the last couple of years on the Big Island is there's so many violent crimes. There's murders that happen. There's all kinds of unbelievable stuff that you wouldn't even think about, And to me, it's sad and it's scary. I have 2 children. My son is 8 years old. My daughter's 11. And, I fear for their safety a lot of times, And it's sad because, it's not supposed to happen in Hilo, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of unthinkable. And how do we address those things, right? Fortunately for us, Big Island has a lot of affordable property, but at the same time, what happens with that? It could be a double-edged sword. There's a lot of people that come here that don't want to be found. They'll buy a cheap property, in the middle of nowhere. build something small, maybe build something unpermitted and just hide out and just, take advantage of services that are afforded to them and, just not really be productive members of society. So, I'm kind of worried about the future, and I hope that, we can address these issues. Yeah.
We're kind of in the Wild West on the Big Island. In East Hawaii and Puna, we are the last affordable place left. And when we get unaffordable in Puna, then where's everybody going to go? And what's happening, because we are so affordable to buy land on the Big Island in the Puna district, that's where everybody's flocking to. And it's, I love Maui. I used to live on Maui. I didn't want to leave Maui, but I couldn't afford to buy a home on Maui. And I didn't want to wind up in my 50s and 60s and not have anything to show for it. And I wound up on the Big Island too, because I wanted to be able to have that dream. And once that dream becomes unattainable in Puna, where are we going to go? Like, where?
I grew up on the island of Molokai, and I was raised with the notion of you work hard and you play even harder kind of thing. But I grew up with my family, my mother, really perpetuating the notion of college and what that looks like, because they can foresee, our parents, our kupuna can foresee about what our economy is looking like. So they raise us never to, in the concept of, they want us to go, but they also want us to return home. Yeah, so they raise us in that notion of, they know that there's gonna be a lot of changes, environmental, culturally, within our lands. So they raise us in regards to that we want you to get a better education. We want you to fulfill your life. We want you to go away and come back. And I cannot say the same things for other islands where we use that phrase, keep Molokai, Molokai, and we stay with that notion. And I will be true and honest with that. I mean, when we have a stop sign in Molokai, it's a big ordeal. So we have that notion of keeping that culture, and it doesn't stop with just our families, but it's like how we are here now. It's a Kākou thing where we, as a community, we are as one. And yes, there is a lot of changes in regards to our community. I'm not gonna lie with that. There is a lot of changes. Before, we never used to lock our doors, and sometimes we do. Some people blame it on the different tourists that are coming to Molokai, or sometimes the homelessness that are coming to Molokai as well. But there can be a lot of different factors that play into it. But it is a community dynamics, and when we talk about sustainability and we wanna keep our Hawaii the same, it comes with that notion that it takes a community effort. Like, I think somebody said, like, we keep talking about all of these changes for many, many years, but how do we create that net of safety within our community instead of just talking about it, but doing it as well? So I was raised differently, and sometimes I hear some of us speak like, oh, we can't afford to live here. We find ways to do it. We live off the land. We use our resources, and we don't rake our resources up. And I think that's what I think some of the generations are not taught to do, that, to rake our resources, that a few fish is great for your family. You don't need 5 coolers for your family, yeah? Because then we end up capitalizing on something that's not ours. We capitalize on things that are natural resources and not necessarily that is ours. And I think that's, if we teach that to our future generations, I think we will go far in that concept. But I definitely agree, and I apologize. I call him who said that we keep talking about these changes, but in order to make these changes, we need to actually do and ask ourselves, like, what are we doing in regards to that, and actually do something about it, and not just talk about it.
I think when you were sharing, Kealoha, about being the way you were raised, and we started with healo. And in order to, really malama that person next to you, malama the presence of that you get to be in that aina, you have to have a sense of kuleana. And I think when you have a sense of responsibility and the right that you have to be here, it couples itself with faith, that if you're fulfilling that kuleana in the way that you're supposed to, everything moves you where it's supposed to be. And some people will say, wow, Kelly, really idyllic, in your life. But I've looked at my own life and seen when you do what's right, when you do because you are in the presence of others that depend on you to be there, to not dig out, to stand and go through it no matter how difficult it is. I too had to leave my home and move to Maui because it was more affordable. We were able to get homestead. And that was a blessing. But you see, it's a blessing because to me, when I look at it, I fulfill my kuleana in the best way I can, and it gets blessed. And so I didn't know it was a blessing that I was moving to Maui. But today I look and I see good things happening. But I just think as Hawaii, as Kanaka, that's who we are. Spiritually, we're so connected that we understand when we fulfill kuleana, pomaikai comes right behind it. And if we don't live our lives like that, then we're always in fear. We're always worried about tomorrow. I'm not going to say I don't worry about tomorrow, but I don't dwell on it because I know that I don't even know if I have tomorrow, but I know that I have today and I have a kuleana for today. And I think if people would live their lives consciously instead of unconsciously, then they would realize that Hawaii is so special that we cannot just go through our day living like we were anywhere. We live in a very unique place, a place that's so far away. Keakua put us so far away from everybody and everything, so isolated, to be able to make choices that are different from others. And so every day I think about that, the work that I do. Am I making a difference? Am I making sure that people cannot just pick me up and put me into the continental United States and say you can do the same thing? No, I have to be able to see that whatever I do, whatever choices that I make, is going to say, I am Hawaii in Hawaii. And if you're not Hawaiian by the koko, then that's the same choice you gotta make too. Because you get to walk on the shoulders of our kupuna daily. And so it's a kuleana that you have to the kupuna that have been here before. And your kupuna to do what's right by them, by the aina, by the people. Learn the olelo. Because in our olelo, when we start to learn olelo, we learn how to take care of other people. We learn how to malama our resources because we have words that talk about that. We have words that describe who we are as Kanaka. And the more people who start to olelo, the more you understand that, the more grounded you can become in who we are. So, yeah, oevale no ku'umana'o.
Mahalo nui, following on Ekela and Kealoha, just you think about that olelo, growing up on Lanai, what you were saying, you kind of going make your own future. Tutu Papa folks, they taught, maika ikana kalima ononoka e akawaha. Yeah, when the hands do good work, the mouth going to eat good food. Tutu would say, and this is the thing I think for Kākou, for us as a people of Hawaii, as you said, not always of the koko, but you come here, you get kuleana now, to be pono on the aina also. So Tutu said, ikaloka hiko kako olae, that our well-being is in unity. That Kākou thing, we got to realize that it's not just me, myself, and I, but it's a Kākou thing. So they taught in sayings, and if we can reinstill some of that wealth of experience, that ike that kupuna had, because they realized they was on islands that were so detached from anywhere. You couldn't just run down the store or flip a switch or flush a toilet, all those things. You get kuleana now if you want those things to do it. So I think a lot of this comes from the ike that our kupuna Hawaii have passed down. Didn't matter what your ili was. Ili puakea, kepani, kolea, whatever, don't matter. We get kuleana once we live here. So, ikaloka hiko kākou ola'ai, unity in our well-being, that or well-being in our unity together, yeah? So, oia kekahi mo'oleloa, mahalo.
I'm inspired to just repeat what was given to us by our kupuna. The simple law of Hawaii was to understand value, the value of family, the value of water, and the value of land. In the choices that we make, especially looking at the future, we take the best of the past, malama it now, so that it's there for all the tomorrows. Being Hawaiian is being responsible. That's being Hawaiian. Has nothing to do with koko. Yeah, ha, that breath. The why, we all come from the same birth waters. And io nalani. The spiritual essence of the islands is what we continue to be as a people. This place is our home. Everyone here, this is our home. And so because it's our home, it's important that we teach the people who come to understand not just the language, but the kupuna's practices. We have this Kuleana. We are blessed. Yes, some of us that are sitting here were Kanaka, but that doesn't make us more Hawaiian than all of you who have taken the time to come here and share your essence, your mana'o. So, simple values. Those three things, family, water, land. If all of the people asked, how will this affect my family, the choices we make? How will this affect the resources, the water? If all of our legislation throughout the world use those simple three values, how much better it would be. And taking care of the world, yes, we're a dot in the middle of the ocean. We're a dot, but the ripple continues to cover the earth. So the Kuleana that we have being here in these islands has been gifted to us, gifted, and we must appreciate that value, touching one another, one to another. We do not have to be in government to govern one another. That idea of alo, that idea of aloha is simple. If all of the choices that we make in the world today recognizes family, recognizes our resources, recognizes the land that blesses us, how much better things can be for everyone, not just for us here. Mahalo.
You know, I can't believe the outpouring of concern. And I think the biggest concern we have is not those that are in this room, but those that are in the big square building downtown. These problems that we're discussing are not new problems. I get hundreds of phone calls a week echoing the very sentiments that are coming out of every one of us here in this room. We have to demand either we get a true two-party system or we get people that are in our system now understanding that deferred maintenance, crumbling infrastructure, and what I agree with John is tax these guys, but what happens when you tax them, the money doesn't go to the kids in Keiki. The money goes to perpetuating the unfunded liabilities that the state has. And until we clean that mess up, we can't expect to go forward. So I think that what comes out of a group like this, and hopefully the social media here at PBS is going to reflect some of these things, is saying, hey, the people are out there, and they know what the problem is. They just want some solutions. You know, we only heard the word legislature once so far. The whole thing is their problem. Tell them what happened here and tell them, look, this is what your voters think. If you want to come back and occupy that office, fix us, help us.
And there's another subject that really hasn't come up in any detail. Right now, we're experiencing the longest and biggest tourism boom in our state's history. Nearly 250,000 tourists are in the islands on any given day, and they spend more than $15 billion annually. Tourism continues to drive our economy. When there's a slump in visitor arrivals, there are painful consequences for our community. That's been the reality for more than 50 years. And today's visitor is bolder. They're told by advertising that they should let Hawaii happen. They research their trip on social media, they look for the insider spots that locals know, and they have a choice of short-term vacation rentals in many neighborhoods. At some of our most beautiful landmarks, crowd control has become an issue. High demand leads to limits on our access.
Start with Natalie Gates from Haleakala. What kind of pressures were you folks under that made you decide that you needed to limit the number of people that could come up there at sunrise?
Well, I think sunrise has been a popular sort of thing since
Samuel Clemens wrote about it in the 1870s. But the visitation to Sunrise has really only taken off drastically in the past few years, probably 10 years or so. And in the past 2 years, we've seen some really, really rapid increases. So now we regularly see 1,000 people up at the top and 200 cars more than we have room for. And so it's a fairly new thing. And when we get that kind of overcrowding, what we end up seeing is people parking on road shoulders in endangered species habitat, blocking the roadways for emergency vehicles. And also it's less of a wonderful experience for people. And when people try to move away from crowds, they end up clambering over rocks or going off trail and getting hurt. So we really thought we needed, the responsible thing was to try to limit it if we could.
You know, I've been very blessed in my life to have traveled the world all over the place. I've been to a lot of places in, throughout the world, and I've looked at the infrastructure, look at the scenery and all that. If we're gonna make Hawaii, you're gonna make tourism a priority. We gotta really make this place a place where it's nice to look at. Hawaii is naturally beautiful, but let me just take one issue for example. Our airport, our terminal is not built for travelers. I'm telling you that, it's not built for travelers. It's built for business, and it's not good. You can go to places where as soon as you get off the airplane, and they welcome you there. You go in there, they have shower where you can go shower in the middle of the ocean, Hawaii. You get people from Asia coming through here, go to mainland. Don't you think they need to shower? Where can they go get shower? None, no place. So we really have to figure out how to make this place, if we really want to make it a tourist spot, like how we want it, we got to start from the basic one, fix the terminal, make it a place where people can come through, not just walk out and boom, right there, H1 right there, Is it really appealing? I don't think it's appealing. I've been to a lot of places where it's really, really appealing as you walk in. It's friendly. They're made for travelers. Our terminal out here is not made for travelers. I got to tell you that. Thank you.
Tourism is nice. It helps our economy, and I understand that because Hawaii is expensive and we need to get everything done. But personally, talking on behalf of my generation, I hear people saying, oh, I want to travel to other places. I want to get out of Hawaii because everywhere else is so beautiful. And I'm thinking, oh, same thing. I've been to all the beaches and things. Nothing's new to me. But the truth is, I actually haven't, because all the popular places with tourists are always so crowded. So we never even bother to go. And so we miss the beauty of Hawaii. And that's also a factor that's scaring away the youth, because we don't understand how beautiful our island actually is. And I think progress, it's nice, but it's also contributing to that, because for rail, for example, my 3-year-old sister won't understand that Hawaii was one of the last states to get a rail system, and that it took us all by shock because it's such a mainland thing to me. But my sister won't understand that. She'll think that the rail is something, oh, it's always been there, and we're just exactly like the mainland. So how are the youth supposed to realize that Hawaii's special and that they realize that they should stay here when it looks just like all the other states? And even the same thing with Olelo Hawaii. I know words, not as much as all my aunties and uncles here though, enough to understand sometimes when my family calls things out to me, like put on your kalipa and stuff like that. But, but in schools, they should practice that more too. Like there's a Hawaiian history class, but that's just an elective. You're not required to take it. Whereas when I was in 5th or 6th grade, they actually required you to take it. And I feel like that should be pushed more, learning about your history. And I know I have friends who are Hawaiian. I'm Hawaiian too. They don't know the words to Hawaii Pono'i. And even my school is starting to change that now. We only do Hawaii Pono'i on Fridays, and all the other days is the U.S. national anthem. But now they're doing away with all that too. So there might be a time where my 3-year-old sister won't even know Hawaii Pono'i, that we had our own anthem, and that's just saddening, and I don't know what to say about it.
One question that there's over here.
Mahelani.
So many thoughts I've had, and some of the things that were running through my mind are sensitive, and so there's a national conversation about something that goes back to the very foundations of America, and it has to do with race. That's a discussion, a very large discussion that has yet to be resolved. It's made progress in the past, it's receded in the past, it's flaring up again. In Hawaii, we have our own conversation, and it has to do with sovereignty. And I'm sitting here thinking, I want to see it before I die. Now, it's not a popular topic of discussion, especially in a mixed group like this. Why do I feel this way? Why do I want sovereignty before I die? And why do I believe that it will probably not happen? And this is a discussion that my husband and I have often. The reason why I want it is sort of a bunker mentality. It's because I believe it's critical to the survival of the people, of the native people of Hawaii. I truly, truly believe this. I don't believe there's a sense, what I hear in this room is a sense of resignation, that we have to resign ourselves to being priced out of our homeland. I cannot accept that. I cannot accept that. And I really don't see any solution except to mobilize our people, withdraw from the larger society, and engage in an agenda of survival, which means that we mobilize and organize and try to secure some of the lands that were illegally taken from us so that we can have a place in our homeland. That's what I believe. Now, you can talk all you want about Kuleana. My husband and I, we're in a ahupua'a. We farm kalo. His family has been in the same place for many, many generations, going back before the mahele. The same taro patches, and they've had to struggle to do that. It's been a great, great challenge. So with respect to Kuleana, I think that we have fulfilled and we continue to fulfill, and it is our intention to do so until we die. But there's a sense that although we talk, it's almost like a platitude. This thing about Hawaiians, our culture is based, Kuleana, all of that, it sounds so beautiful. But let's be real about this. The people who are making the decisions about our economic engine, who are overwhelming our islands with tourists, who will not have an opportunity really to understand these concepts of responsibility in Kuleana. There is I don't really see any meaningful effort to balance. I think most, we fight for the water and we say we want balance, please don't take it all. Let's come up with a way that we can share this resource. And I feel the same way about tourism. Why is there no balance? Why don't we have community advisors to the people who are running this industry? We feel it, I don't want to monopolize this conversation, but I lived on Oahu for most of my professional life, and I now live in a very rural place on Maui. I understand the lifestyle on Oahu. I understand the traditional lifestyle where I currently live. It's really, really hard, I think, for somebody from Oahu to understand how impactful it is to have zillions of tourists overwhelming every square inch of aina that doesn't belong to them. They're very, very intrusive. They go on to private lands without any respect. They don't know, and they're being encouraged to do this by publications, by self-guided tours and stuff. I consider them either naive or, they suspend the usual civilities when they're in the country or something. But, on our own land, we have people going in there and having sex. I mean, this is the kind of thing. so very disrespectful. So I would ask our tourism industry, can they please really, or we should try to get them to look at balance and being more responsive to communities. That's just one thing. And if through a conversation you can persuade me that Hawaiians' political self-determination and separating themselves somehow so that they can mobilize and take care of themselves in their own homeland is not the best approach, then I'd like to hear it.
I think it's going to take more than tourism officials, because as somebody who deals on social media every day, when Kepa and they were talking about Kuleana, what was coming to my mind was it's all of our Kuleana, and it's one thing to say that, but I mean, I deal with this every day, and it's just waves of people coming every day. And when you say, no, it's not the pedicure pond, it's actually Kalahui Pua'a, and it's very sacred land. It's not a pedicure pond. What happens when we get these waves and waves of people? They're not stopping. And so it's not just tourism officials. It's not enough for me as my Kuleana to correct them and say, show some respect, because when I say, please respect our culture, please respect our land, I'm told to go take a hike. And I'm Caucasian, and I'm told to take a hike by other Caucasians. And it's crazy. You know, I respect the land and culture. It feels like the wave, sometimes it's not a resignation, but I'm like one voice. And I mean, this is something I deal with in Kainoa, and I were touching on this. Hours a day spent in technology and social media, where this is an onslaught and it's ongoing. And, you know, how can we build almost like cadres of people to respond? You know.
Auntie?
I was just going to say, in the 60s, it was surf, sand, and sea, and they couldn't find it anywhere else but Hawaiʻi. And we allowed that to happen. Surf, sand, and sea is everywhere now. Why is it so unique for them to come here? And it's because we are Hawaiʻi. But they don't find that. They go to the Waikiki and you can't find Hawaiʻi in Waikiki. They come to the neighbor islands and they're looking for that secret waipana, that special place where the Hawaiians hang out, so that they can find and search for that Hawaiʻi. And that's the sad part. We have a lot of Department of Hawaiian Homelands that are being invaded because people want to jump off the sides of cliffs and land in the ocean for some strange reason out at South Point. But that's scary. Liability issues. And it has to stop somewhere. And I don't know how. Ed?
Aloha, thank you. I too, like my wife, I've been trying to think about what can I really say. And I will talk about Vai. I'm a 6th generation to the Aina I live on. I've been fighting for Vai, most precious resources that was taken away from us by a large corporation that is on the stock market. I'm getting old, and I've been fighting for a long, long time. So, land and water. We're not in charge of the water. We think we are. You have people in these positions. It's all about politics. The word economics has a very hungry appetite, and it can never get full. Each plane that flies in, no matter where they come from, there's one person that is willing to purchase land, $1 million, $5 million, $12 million, that puts all of these affordable housing out of reach. How do we manage the tourist industry? Where we live, we have to calm ourselves down for having road rage on a daily basis. Who is doing this to us? The tourist industry.
I do not know the true answer, but something has to happen. But I too believe if anyone gonna keep Hawaii, Hawaii is the Kanaka Maole, people of the Hawaiian ancestry, will solve this problem together as a Kākou thing. This is Hawaii. People, we are victims of a crime and crimes that has been committed a long time ago up to the present moment. What our fight in Hawaii, what we had to go through, the political, the government, big business, I call it culture genocide. So it's this thing about how we're gonna make them better. It's deep, deeper than what you think it is. This is a very prominent group here. On my daily life, I hear Kanaka. He not happy. She not happy. They won't come in here, but they'll go on the side and talk to us. Again, how are we going to figure this out? Mahalo.
Uncle, I got a kāko'o that's, and as, you know, kind of in this younger generation here, we were brought up with this pride in being Hawaiian, right? In the somewhat the height of the Hawaiian Renaissance. And when we get to that original question, how do we keep Hawaii, Hawaii? The reason Hawaii still is Hawaii is because of some people in this room. Because of the work on the Aina that you, Uncle Ed and Auntie Mahea have done, that the work in politics and in education that you have done, you know, Kumu John, so much people in here, so many people in here, that is the reason that we in our generations are able to feel pride in being Hawaiian, are able to go to school and get from Punana Leo all the way up to a PhD, are able to actually learn Hawaiian things, do Hawaiian things, not just work in the lo'i, but get degrees in Hawaiian things. And it's funny that, it's not funny, it's telling that after we talk about affordable housing, brain drain, development, change to the social fabric of areas like Ala Moana Park, we get to tourism and somebody gonna drop the sovereignty bomb, right? Because now we're at 9:15, where, you know, we're in, and now we're talking about the real stuff, right? So we don't have to talk about sovereignty. Let's use the word home rule, okay? Just to start with, right? We talk about affordable housing. You talk about any of the things we've talked about. We can make better decisions than somebody 5,000 miles away in Washington, D.C., right? Or potentially a lot of us in this room could be making better decisions than the people in the square building down the road. But now we are them, they are us, right? We are all Kākou. We are one community. So it's up to, you know, to us to get involved there. It's up for them to get out. But I believe that it is a possibility, a free and independent Hawaii. And you got to throw it out there, right? I mean, we only got 2 hours. But well, it's not up to me. It's a Kākou thing, right? But when we talk about everything, how do we keep children here? How do we keep our young here? How do we make things affordable for people? How do we reduce homelessness? The idea of home ownership and the American dream is not a Hawaiian one, right? Kanaka lived here for 2,000 years with no home ownership, but no homelessness, no famine, right? We're talking about, like, that was true wealth. And we have to reframe, we have to readjust that. And we can talk about these things like colonialism and cultural genocide and sovereignty without anybody feeling like they're being left out or this is not your conversation. And I think that's a discussion we have to have, is that we can talk about a free and independent Hawaii like there are more than 200 free and independent nation states around the world that are healthy, wealthy, and have great statistics and education and healthcare and all of that. And we can talk about that like it's not just a Kanaka thing, it's a Kākou thing. And Kanaka can lead the way and can help drive that, because the values, the foundation is led by Kanaka, is led by Kupuna, that have taught it to the younger generations to carry that through. But to me, that is the way we truly solve all of these problems in one way or another, is by a free and independent Hawaii or some form close to that.
I know,
Go ahead, Ilya.
if I could just add one thing, this is a great discussion that we're talking about, and some of these goals are, far future, medium future. The beautiful thing is, this August, we all get to choose who's in the square building. We get to choose in Honolulu Hale, Hawaii County Building, all of these places. We all get to choose. And I've worked in politics and seen the power of good people with good mana'o to make good choices. So look for those candidates who represent the values that you hold. And if you cannot find one, maybe it's supposed to be you.
Yeah, may I just bring something up since you brought it up?
Sure.
Let's go to a slide, because this is the percentage of eligible voters who have voted in recent elections. You know what the numbers are going to be. There they are. We are not voting. And is it because we don't see an alternative, or because we want somebody else to do it? But we are not voting, and we do have a choice.
And that really saddens me, because it doesn't take much. Once upon a time, to lead a community, there were battles, there was war. As a dear friend and mentor of mine says, now you just stand on the side of the road with a sign, shaka everybody, and you get to lead, right? And so it's all of our kuleana to participate in that, to find a candidate or step up, or at the very least vote. And so, on the way to whatever that long-term solution is, I just really encourage everybody to participate in that.
And I want to just continue what Eli is saying. I really want to feel very hopeful with this younger generation. What I witnessed a couple months ago in Washington, with that very large voice of the young folks that were 18, 19, 20, or even younger, it gave me chicken skin, and I cried, and I watched. That movement made me realize that we do have hope in the younger generation to really take care of the damage that our generation did. And I speak for myself, grew up in this, born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s, graduated in the 70s, went to college in the 70s. And I know that I was not, at 21, even at 22, I was not, half as focused as what I see right now with these young folks. That story that we just saw Jennifer's kids, put on, and just what we're seeing with the movement of Rebecca wanting to go into journalism, as articulate as she is, that's what we're seeing in the schools, and that's where it's going to happen. And we really have to push and really encourage our young folks to get involved, to vote for somebody that they really believe in, find a candidate that they can believe in, that believes in something that they're very passionate about, and vote. And I really also, I work every day with these young folks, and I know their potential. They are our storytellers. Hawaii has taken the lead. They have literally taken the lead in digital media and creative media, and thanks to our leaders, our Bayonet Mainam here taking the lead over at UHS Oahu with building creative media. It's our Hawaii youth that are going to be taking the lead in telling the stories, our way, not somebody else coming in and telling our story in a very cheesy way. And I say that literally because that's happened too much. So I really want to, I'm hopeful, and I want to remain hopeful that it's this younger generation that's growing up in Hawaii that we have to encourage to take the lead, because we when we get back to how we're going to keep Hawaii, I really believe it's this younger generation. And we have a 35-year-old daughter, but we are helping to raise 3 young children, and we want them to grow up in the Hawaii that that our parents taught us to love and to appreciate. So
This has been a really dynamic conversation, and I think many of us have been trying to figure out at what point we need to sort of insert our voice and share our mana'o. And I guess I speak for myself when I've been trying to figure out how to get in as well. I want to say that the intergenerational brilliance of this group is remarkable in that, you know, Candy, just because you grew up in the 50s and went to college in the 70s doesn't make you, you know, any less brilliant than people who are growing up with the punana leo and the opportunities today. I think the abundance of knowledge and wisdom in this room is really hopeful. And we could see that in so many of our young people who really find the cultural values of what makes this place distinctive as their driving force. And that's what makes Hawaii, Hawaii. It's what you hold in your na'au, right? And then how that comes out in the many, many different things that you do to uplift our place, our community. So I want to go back and I want to say, absolutely, we need to build a stronger educational Hawaii for our children and our families from the day that they come out of the womb until the day that we say aloha to them and they move on. So again, I think one of the hopeful things about this conversation is that intergenerational wisdom and what it's teaching all of us here in terms of uplifting the kaumaha that I think we all feel right now. And that kaumaha is telling us this is our responsibility, right? This is not a choice.
I heard the word hope, which brings us to a bit of a next subject. And Mike, we want to talk with you after that. With land so dear in terms of financial and emotional value, there have been bitter clashes throughout Hawaii's history about what to do with it, as you well know. Prime ag or housing. High-rises which contain the land footprint or height limits which preserve the vistas. And there's always this difference, expensive or less expensive. Tonight we bring you a story from Kauai that might inspire us all to take a stand in keeping Hawaii, Hawaii.
This entire Ahupua, 1,600 acres, belongs to Kamehameha Schools, had been in 40 years of pasture leases to the Robinson family. And in the early 1980s, Kamehameha was going to build a resort community and golf course in this valley and the next valley over. Our Kupuna and Ohana and Kamehameha Schools alumni from this community protested that movement.
La France Kapaka Arboleda was the one that came and activated us and organized a group of people who had a representative from all the major families of the North Shore, Kilauea to Haena. It took us 4 years of negotiating with the trustees and the land board, and then in '86 we signed a lease with them for 25 years and a 10-year addition.
What it takes to move large institutions like that are people pushing them in a direction. And that's what we were doing. So it wasn't such a struggle for me because there was always the hope that Kamehameha would come in and support us. And eventually they did.
And it was with that paradigm shift and the new strategic planning and the new trustees coming on that there was a shift in what Kamehameha decided to do.
And their vision was not to develop this space, but to save it as a living learning center, a place where our people could come, learn, teach our kids, practice, connect with the land again, and remember what it is to have land and have a relationship with it, land and resources. People who don't have a space, who don't have resources and land, generally don't have aloha to give. How can you give aloha and have that when you've lost everything and had it all taken from you? And so what we have been able to hold on to here is a space for the people in this community and the Hawaiians so that we can give and share because we have a space.
No matter what the adversity is, you never lose the dream and you never give up. You just keep moving forward.
You just have to push for what you feel is important. And that's, again, that's one of the things that we teach the kids that come through here, is we tell them our creation story and how we saved this place from development. And we tell them, if you have special spaces, fight for them because you can win.
Aloha. I have to apologize. Born and raised here in Hawaii. Don't know that much Hawaiian language, so sorry. But I am a businessman here in Hawaii. I do food processing. I own real estate. And I've heard comments about taxing. I just want everybody to know that who do not know, that we are the heaviest taxed state in the nation. We are so heavily taxed. And you hear about this, $10 where everybody else is paying $15 wages. Well, here in Hawaii, the employer has to pay the employee's medical. That a lot of people don't realize that's $600-700 a month. We now have our legislatures have now become our unions. They're telling us we have to pay our employees this. We have to give them sick leave this. We have to give them everything this. Used to be in old Hawaii, hey, down the street, get one better job. We leave here, we go there, right? If I can't keep my employees happy, they're gonna find another job. And although I have minimum wage, I have middle, and I have top management. All the jobs that everybody is talking about. I have over 180 employees. So I have what you are talking about, and I'm a local boy, and I built it from the ground, right? To keep our people here in Hawaii. But like the Hawaiians, like everything else, everything is working against businesses. And big businesses would like to see small businesses go out so they can take over our businesses and make it someplace else. Their laulaus, their kalua pig, their kimchi can be made from Korea. They can bring them in from Samoa, okay? So we in business, and so funny, our property tax on businesses. Try to imagine, I have a 20,000 square foot lot in town, and I pay $3,300 a month property tax only. That's not mortgage, that's not anything else. That's just, so when you talk about pay more tax or tax more people, the problem, and we talk about this just now, get the right elected officials to come in. I would pay more taxes if I thought it was being spent right, right? Yeah. The problem that we have is that we don't think being the heaviest taxed in the nation, and yet we have the Hawaiians, we have the homeless, we have unaffordable housing, okay? And that can all really be corrected because I know great developers in town, and the state has plenty land. And we can work with our unions, and our unions are locals. And they will work to build buildings at different prices so that they will help build. And it cannot be affordable homes to buy. And I will tell you this, we tried that, where you have a home, you buy a very affordable home but you gotta keep it for 8 years. But in 8 years, the thing doubles, everybody sells and leaves, right? So it's gotta be controlled. It's gotta be affordable living so our youth can stay here. We've got a great university. They don't have to spend $30,000, $40,000. Our University of Hawaii is fantastic, you know? But we need also for businesses to support other businesses. So when you say, well, our employees cannot make this, well, a lot of the mainland companies don't have management teams here that they pay, right? See? So maybe they should be paying more. You talk about sustainability. How is Hawaii gonna be sustainable? What are we gonna make? How many pigs we're gonna raise? What we're gonna do? How do we become sustainable? If all of a sudden you tell all the big retailers and all those people, you know what? X%, 10% of whatever you sell gotta be local. It can be music, it can be shirts, it can be vegetables, it can be kalua pig, it could be fish, it could be anything that all of a sudden we would put people back to work in textiles, back to work in making wood, ukuleles, and so forth, because that will be things that they will have to promote. In so doing that, they will promote your culture, the culture of Hawaii. And what happens is then more people will know more about the beauty of the people of Hawaii.
I think we have one more comment before we move to video. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to mahalo everybody for their mana'o. So many things are coming up for me. And, first I want to acknowledge the Waipa story. That ahupa of Waipa is right in the middle of the devastation that happened in that storm.
Right.
And they were virtually spared. Very, very minimal damage. And I just want to send my aloha to them. But I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that was Keakua and our kupuna protecting that place because there's something special going on there. They're going back and they're looking at repurposing ancestral ways of thinking and doing and community building as a way to create self-resiliency in the face of the pressures of development in Hanalei and on the North Shore. And I think that's something we need to look at. And we need to take some value in that. And there's a lot of things that are being talked about tonight. And, we're pointing out problems. But I think what happens is, when we start to advocate for these individual issues, education, housing, economics, what we end up doing is falling victim and falling into the trap of identity politics. And what we're doing at the same time is conceding the larger problem that nobody's talked about yet tonight. And that's at the worldview level, right? So a lot of our kupuna and people in this room are talking about Hawaiian ways of thinking. That is probably our way out. I will bet my life on it. That's our way out. Because the worldview that currently dominates and runs our society here in Hawaii is a capitalist worldview, driven by an American political system. And anybody who understands capitalism knows that to maintain the status quo, you have to increase productivity. Productivity has to be high. Consumption has to be high. Growth has to be high for it to maintain itself. And that extractive and unsustainable model does not work on an island. And until we acknowledge that fact and say, this system of rule and this worldview does not work for us, and it's pushing us to the limits. We brought it up in so many different topics here tonight. What we really need to do is acknowledge that and say, that's not going to work for us anymore. And, whether it's Hawaiian sovereignty, I know that kind of turns people on its side and it makes things uncomfortable for people, especially non-Hawaiians. I think we have to look at it as an opportunity, whether you're Hawaiian or non-Hawaiian, to not look at Hawaiians standing up and carrying our Kuleana to protect this place in perpetuity for our future generations, not as a threat, but as an opportunity. And if we can acknowledge that, capitalism, productivity, growth, has to be unfettered, does not work here, and we have to figure out ways like what Uncle was talking about. What is enough? How do we create local resiliency? Because globalism is reaching a tipping point. And what's going to end up happening is we're going to have to come back to local resiliency. And if that's the case, there is nobody better positioned to lead that than Native Hawaiians. Because it's only a few generations that we've been beneficiaries and wards of the state. Prior to that, we have a lineage of production, creation, abundance, sustainability. That's what we need to get back to. That's what we need to do as Hawaiians. We cannot continue, like Kākou, great. Perfect choice for the word. Not Mako Hawaiians, it's Kākou, right? Us, everybody, not us Hawaiians. If we are allowed to do that in a Kākou way and other people acknowledge that, we have something valuable as far as a leadership perspective, that gives me hope. And it's this younger generation who knows a language, knows their culture, whether they're Hawaiian or not. If they have Ike Hawaiʻi, if they have Kuana Ike Hawaiʻi, Hawaiian worldview, that's what we need. That's what's going to lead us out of here, and that's what gives me hope for the future.
Mahalo, Keone. And I appreciate you sending a shout out to the Sprouts and other members of the Waipa community on the North Shore of Kauai and all areas of Kauai. And other islands. Oahu was affected too, and other places. We want to take a quick check. Social media is going off, and we want to check in with Liberty at our social media center. Liberty?
Yeah, that's right. We're getting a steady stream of comments through Twitter and especially our Facebook live stream. The comments have been steady all night as well. We did receive this email from Lasha Lin. She says, tourism is not Hawaii's saving grace. It is its worst curse. It's like a bad habit. Own it, but contain it. Use self-control or tourism will degrade Hawaii to a point where we will no longer recognize our home. Right now, our politicians and decision makers have no self-control when it comes to tourism. Leslie?
All right, thank you, Liberty. You know, we only have about 10 minutes left to talk. We want to make the most of it. I wonder if, you know, when you come here tonight, are you thinking, oh, what am I going to go away with? What is this going to have done for me in the end, right? Well, how is this helpful? Would you put your minds to thinking about just a takeaway, something you can do tomorrow or the next day, but that you will do, that will result in concrete action? Maybe short takeaways from a number of you here, if you would?
I've got one. So I resonated with the word Kuleana and kupuna, and someone once told me that if you want to stump an American, you ask them the names of their great-grandparents. And so it's actually pretty deep when I think about my Kuleana, so hearing about resilience and so what am I not doing? What am I breaking that chain that makes my family not my family? And so I think we all may be guilty of that. I am. And so I think for me that takeaway is that I have to do a lot better at that.
I'd like to chirp in too. I kind of feel like an outsider. I'm a newbie that moved here 11 years ago. Although my family's history goes back to the early 1900s, I was raised on the mainland. I was considered a Katonk, and I came back to reconnect with Hawaii and really touch some of the values that have been spoken about. I really appreciate the sage words that were given. And it isn't always visible. And in many ways, for me just to be here, I dilute the very spirit you talk about. And I see that I have participated in that at some level just by bringing my own culture, my own upbringing, this big city. It just influences things. And I'm so happy that this subject has been able to be brought forth because I never get to see it. And just to touch it here does give me chicken skin too, that it hits something in the spirit and the soul, and that's Hawaii to me. Those are the things that are still alive. And my mother, she's 96, she grew up on plantation. I feel that when I hear those words. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
It's a beautiful program you made, Leslie.
Oh, thank you.
And the, you know, the spirit and the value of the culture is clear from this discussion, very important. At the same time, we have to work together to make sure that we survive. You know, tourism is not necessarily sustainable, even if you like it. and you know, one good storm could blow that up right away. We have to find another way to do our economy. Olin and I were involved in that 10 years ago. We're still involved in it today. We have to build a technology sector in this state. So all those kids can get really good paying jobs, can stay here, have the value of their education, make Hawaii famous and productive to the world and keep up with the world. We can't be backwater. We've got to keep up. That's the way to do it. There was a lot of talk about technology in the first 10 years of this century, but it is actually diminished these days, and we need to have more of it. So I trying to integrate on all this. Seems like more people should run for office, and they should bring cultural values, Hawaiian cultural values, so everyone can get behind an effort to make Hawaii sustainable economically. You know, if you have the money, you don't worry so much. The house becomes affordable. If you have the money, you can lead a better life. You don't have to leave town. So we have to develop the money in lieu of or in addition to tourism through technology. That's my message.
I think for myself, a lot of what I'm doing already is what a lot of all of you are doing. There's things that we're doing that we think is going to make a difference, and I think that's where there's a lot of hope, because it's what we do by ourselves instead of talking about it that's really going to come about. And so the things that we're doing, like my wife and I were saying, is it's centered on our family. And our big thing is, we just don't see fruit trees in people's yards. We just don't see people with gardens. We keep thinking someone else is going to provide it for us. And, we got involved with this because that's how I grew up. That's how I thought everybody grew up. And now I find nobody has gardens, nobody has fruit trees anywhere in their yards, and they expect somebody else to get it for them. And so we've turned into a group of consumers. That's not going to happen in our house. That doesn't happen in our house. Every meal has something from the yard. It's something that we grew. It's a lifestyle we share. We give gifts of trees to people at a wedding, at a graduation. That's their firstborn. That's what they need to keep going. That's a culture that we're promoting. And I know every one of you are doing something like that. But that's the kind of stuff that you just have to be resilient and you have to keep pushing forward and making it happen. Now, what am I going to do more? One thing I just learned is that I got Google Translator, and I found out I can translate all kinds of languages. And Hawaiian's in there. It doesn't speak yet. That's the thing that we might want to do. But it's like, there's a lot of technology that's out there. I'm going into YouTube. I'm looking at all kinds of stuff all the time. But it's that the learning the little bits and pieces that each person's doing is kind of helpful. And sometimes you feel you're by yourself when you're doing it. And maybe what I'm going to be doing different here is just finding other ways that I can reach out to with other people. And that's kind of a helpful thing. I think I do it already, but maybe we can accelerate that a little bit more. It's our neighbor. It used to be, if I get along with my neighbors, it's a really good thing. If I don't get along with neighbors, it's a really bad thing. It used to be really easy. It's getting hard now. Everybody's getting more and more mad at this whole thing about voting. That's another thing that really bothered me. I've been trying for years trying to find out why people don't vote. And what really bothers me is people are really proud that they don't vote, and that just scares the heck out of me. But everybody that did vote for the first time, they do it for selfish reasons, and that's even scarier too. What happened to this idea that we belong to something and we all need to be a part of it? That's not in our culture to a large degree. My daughter knows she needs to vote. That's our job. We got to get everybody to take that responsibility. So, that's the things that I'm doing, and I know everybody here is doing something, but everybody should be doing something more. That's all our jobs.
I don't know that I have an answer to your question. There's a lot, and I have to sort of internalize and think about things. I was on the Hawaii Tourism Authority Board of Directors when that campaign came out, Let Hawaii Happen. I was chair of the board right at the sort of start of that campaign. And what I was troubled by was that everything was aloha, and I thought just too much pressure on one word. If I had my druthers, I would take aloha out of everything, take the term out of everything that we were doing. And one of the responses, Let Hawaii Happen, was a response to a lot of things where competitors now were sort of throwing Hawaii under the bus. There was a commercial, a Mexican couple coming to a taxi, or a couple who had visited Mexico coming to a taxi, and the taxi driver is saying, did you enjoy yourself? And the couple is like, oh yeah, and it's much cheaper than Hawaii, going down to Mexico. We cannot, to Skylark's point, we can't compete with beaches. And so Let Hawaii Happen was a campaign that was in response to that. And one of my favorite spots, I have to say, was the camera going to a house, and right outside the door was like a bazillion slippers. And then you go into the house, and of course, one of my favorite people in the world, Lena Alapavao from Kauai, was welcoming visitors into her home. And slippers outside the house, I don't know that is Hawaiian, but that is certainly Hawaii. And the notion that you all come inside our home and we feed you and we talk to you and we'll make music together, and that was a really important thing to me. The challenge for me with tourism, I saw the best of tourism and I saw the worst of tourism. And I wish the best of tourism on everybody, and I don't wish the worst of tourism on anyone. And tourism is by definition a consumptive industry. It is give and take. I give to you, you take it away. And you come back and I give to you and you take it away. And I'm in agreement with Candy and with Maynette and with Keone and I'm also in agreement with Kaipo to a certain extent. Kaipo from Twitter or Facebook, or that this notion of off track, and these are issues that the whole world deals with. I would challenge you, Kaipo, to look at the people in this room And so there is not the token Caucasian and the token African American and the token Muslim and the token Christian sitting around a table. We are Caucasian and Chinese and Hawaiian and Samoan in one person. Nowhere else in the world you have that. Nowhere else in the world we have this mixture of people getting along. And I said this in our board, please don't backhand me, Candy. I said this in our board meeting the other day, that I really feel we really are the most racist people in the world. If I sing Mr. Sancho Lee, if I sing Manuela Boy, we really are the most racist people. The challenge with our racism is that we have developed a way to become color conscious rather than color blind. And that color consciousness drives us, challenges us to really see the person in you. That is aloha, that I acknowledge that you have a soul. We just wear different clothes. And I feel like, we had developed this way of everything what we are the aloha state. That wasn't our doing. Somebody came and told us you are the aloha state. Okay, then good, you native people, do your work now. And if I look at someone like Rebecca, who is thinking about going away, I'm like, you must go away. Because you must walk about. When I was on the Tourism Authority board and traveling to America and elsewhere, I saw so much Hawaiian activity happening outside of Hawaii. You know why? Because once you leave home, it's cool to be Hawaiian. And suddenly these football players who never touched hula in high school, they're dancing hula at the luau. And so you're walking about, and then you realize what the jewel, what the gem, what the momi is that is Hawaii. And then you come home and you teach us all the things. Yeah, thank you. Kalamai.
I love what you're saying. I wish we could hear so much more tonight. We're going to have to do this again. It's going to take a while to process everything we covered tonight. We want to thank our studio guests who came from all over the state. We learn so much when we come together face to face. When we truly listen, we learn. And speaking with civility and respect makes it easier for others to hear. To all of you who contributed your views on social media as well, mahalo for being part of this Kākou. These are times of rapid change in the global squeeze. We're trying to hold on to what we value, but our lives are busy, full of obligations and distractions. We wonder why we don't have the time to think about all of this, let alone do something about it. One takeaway from this program, the idea of committing to shaping change instead of letting it drive us, to finding common ground and standing together. We need to take the time to reflect and identify what we cannot afford to lose and work to keep it. And there's nothing weak or phony about aloha. On behalf of the PBS Hawaii board and staff, I want you to know that we're honored to be your public television station. Our Kākou Town Hall closes now with many, many thanks and gratitude to you, with a look at two very different leaders with courage and wisdom. One leader had no title or standing. The other leader had both. One gave his life. The other gave his life's work to keep Hawaii, Hawaii. Aloha nui.
When they used to bomb it, like my grandpa said, like when he was little, they used to like stay up late and just like pretend it was like 4th of July practically. He'll just like light up in the sky.
Where was your grandpa?
Oh, he was at McKenna Landing, and like they used to watch it when they were little, like blow up.
Opposition to the bombing and the U.S. military's control over the island was led by the activist group Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. The Ohana staged a series of occupations in the mid-70s that led to arrests and the tragic loss of Kimo Mitchell and George Helm, who were last seen in rough seas traveling at night by surfboard between Maui and Kaho'olawe. It would take decades before the bombing was stopped and the island was returned to the state. George Helm had urged people not to be afraid of change.
Change is
synonymous to revolution. And revolution comes from the word revolving, turning in and out so that you have something better to live with. And we say again, we want to get rid of that image, radicals. We don't know what that word means, but I know a lot of people get turned off by us, not giving us a chance. You know, we're not getting our kicks doing this. This is the beginning. After this, bow, we're going down to something else. What we're looking for is the truth. The truth, the truth, the truth, the truth. Aloha no.
Back when he was a freshman in Congress, Daniel Akaka reached out to the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. We spoke with the late senator last year, just before his 93rd birthday.
I want to say aloha to the people of Hawaii, that aloha has a power that can make the world better. And I would say that the people who were born or raised or come here and have lived here can help disseminate this. And we need to continue to do that as a mission from Hawaii to the rest of the world.
Aloha no, mahalo nui.